Hi Liz, I wanted to go over your design a little bit and just show you a couple of the mechanics of making a piece like this. Although the piece is extremely straightforward, there's still some fundamental physics of what can and can't be done when making a pierced piece. So I've got it laid out two ways here on the computer screen. This way, the lettering is simply recessed. And if I go to the email that was sent here, it's hard to tell if this is the fabric behind here or if it's the floor of the gold piece. I actually think that this design here is closer to this, where there's a recessed floor there. And the reason why is, if we go back to that, there's nothing holding this piece. This would just fall right through if that was not attached to something. Now this one is completely pierced out. Okay, so this is recessed. This one is pierced. Okay, so I've got this thing laid out in those two ways, recessed and then also pierced. So I'm going to render these both ways for you, and you tell me which one you had envisioned. Now, when I did the pierced, so the C, the N, the I, those can be just completely pierced. But the hashtag, if I don't have these little supports here, this just falls through. There's nothing to hold it, to join it to the rest. Now, those little supports are also recessed. So we do try to kind of keep them so that they'll just fade away to the I. And then when I do on this round piece to connect the inner of the O to the rest of it, I do recess those and I also kind of curve them. So that is the two different ways that can be done. And I also wanted to give you a physical measurement on this. Let's see where I ended up. I set boundaries for how big it should be. It's 31 millimeters. Okay, so 31 millimeters is um, about just under 1.25 inches. It's 1.22 inches. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and prepare these files after I hear from you about which one you like. And also, I'll need to know what metals that this needs to be rendered in. This computer file hooks into a 3D printer, and so this piece will print in wax just like it is now, and then we use that wax to make a mold to pour the metal into. So however this comes out here is how it's going to come out in finished metal, okay? And I guess the only other thing, if you do want like a smaller version of this, let's just go ahead and address that question before, while we're here. There is a limit to how small these can be done. For instance, and there's a reason why. When we make a mass-produced piece like this where there's a metal mold, it's not the same as having something engraved with a laser, okay? But it sometimes ends up being less expensive for production to just cast these and polish them, okay? So I think we're on the right track doing the casting. But when we take something that is metal mold and we cast and polish it, and the engraving's already cast into the piece, we reach a limit as to how small this can get. So let's say, let me just take a measurement. Let's say you wanted one that was like a mini-me here, like a 20 millimeter. Not saying you do, but just in case this question happens to cross your mind later. The space between here and here, it really cannot be smaller than 0.3 millimeters, okay? And so actually you are about, what, 0.327? Let's see, now, is that the smallest area on here? Probably. And I actually am using the first font that you sent me. The second font, although it was thicker, it was more problematic getting the whole piece to stick together. Yeah, that's about as small as that can go, is about 20 millimeters. Okay, so if you do want to make a smaller version, that's going to be your limit. Like, let's say you said and for instance, let's say you wanted one that was even smaller. And that's the thing, is that this, so then everything has to change, right? So if this gets smaller, then all of these details have to get thicker. So those are some of the things that we watch out for. There's one other thing I wanted to address. on these pieces. Let me pause and think for a second. Oh yeah, okay. So when I got your file, I did have to change a couple things, and I want to go over those changes in case you're noticing them, okay? So let's go back to these are the two original pieces that you sent me, right? If we were going to make this piece so that the this gold part here would just stand alone, kind of like those, let's see if I can find one real quick. It's a love pendant based on a sculpture. Yeah, if you were going to make something like this, where it was just the words cut out, then this would definitely be great. However, because on my instructions, I've got this, the pierced or the recessed, then actually this works out better. Okay, so even that being the case, so get rid of this, let's go with this guy. Even that being the case with this guy here, see how these just barely touch? What happens here is as this piece of metal gets really sharp and thin, it starts to break off during molding and casting. So that's something that I had to address. And then also the space between here and here is just a little bit too tight for pierced. So there's a couple different areas here that the letters were just packed in just slightly too tight for what can be done. Remember, you're looking at it like, you know, this is huge, but you have to keep in mind actual size. So I did modify this so that it's production ready for jewelry. Okay, so now you're seeing like that these two pieces don't completely touch anymore, and that's actually only 1 millimeter in there in space, so it's really negligible. But that gives us enough continuity in the metal to slink through here and hold this piece together. When we really like try to push the envelope for things being tiny and tightly packed, we don't get a good product. And a piece like this, the metal, when it's cast, it has to come out beautiful because you've got a very bright polished top on it. And if we pack all of this stuff in too much and have these little sharp corners on things, what happens is that the mold starts to break up during the casting process, and we'll end up with what's called porosity in the piece, and it just looks terrible. So that's how I modified it. I just spaced these things out a little bit. And then, you know, this is completely centered, this piece here, but lettering is tricky, right? So this is centered, but because the N has this leg on it over here and the O doesn't, I moved the entire piece up just a little bit. So those are just some of the minor changes that I made just to make this so that it could be cast in metal. Okay, all right, hopefully this video was informative and helpful for future designs and for this one. So I need you to answer 2 questions. Do you want it recessed or pierced? And I need to know what metals you would like this rendered in. Thank you.